Hello, I am Alan Wellen. This is a video to cover my tool that I wrote for CSC 842 Security Tool Development at Dakota State University. So I wrote PasteSend, the idea being that sometimes I don't want to log into websites from a VM that I'm in, but I want to transfer data out of it. This can happen if I'm doing some malware analysis and I'm concerned that although I'm pretty certain that I have not activated malware or I've neutered the malware, I still don't want to expose my credentials for either my school login or my Google Docs login, so that I don't want to risk exposing my credentials. Additionally, I don't want to just plain text paste my notes and my research into PasteSend for anyone to see. So ideally, I would use a mechanism to transfer that data out of the VM. So this uses Selenium, which is a automation framework that allows you to, via Python or other languages, control a web browser, in this case Chrome. So there are a variety of arguments that I've provided to send a file via PasteSend or get a file via PasteSend. It automatically encrypts the data, compresses the data, or compresses it first and encrypts it, and base 64 encodes it by default. You have the ability to provide a key. By default, it has a decent key, but obviously it's a known key and a known IV, so ideally you would like to use your own key and IV. You can randomly generate one rather than specifying one. You can change the type of base encoding. So I found that PasteSend, if you simply put base 64 encoded data into PasteSend, sometimes it'll get upset. So varying the type of base encoding that you're using can allow you to bypass some of PasteSend's restrictions, because generally they want you to use their developer API to upload data, which we don't want to do here, because I don't want to expose my personal information on a possibly compromised VM. So I don't want to use my developer key to interact with PasteSend from there. Additionally, sometimes PasteSend will identify that you are doing something possibly suspect or malicious, possibly based upon entropy. So, or just simply that you are using just purely base 64 encoded data. I additionally have the ability to add a text header where it will automatically go out to a dictionary website and pull a variety of words up to a character count and shove that at the front of your payload. And again, you can specify that width, and when you get the file back from PasteSend, it'll automatically chop that off. So we'll give it a try here. So I'll just simply send the README that we have here in the directory. We'll give it a random. We'll ask it to generate a random key and IV, because I'm sure I'm already hated by PasteSend. We'll use base 85 rather than base 64, and we'll ask it to generate 10,000 characters worth of a header. If I understood how to use my own tool, I would have used the parameter correctly. So it outputs the MD5s at various stages of generating the data. So the initial MD5 of the raw data itself, an MD5 of the zipped data, and MD5 of the base encoded data. That way, on the way out or the way back, you can verify that it works properly. So here it loads Chrome. Although it was very brief, it hits the burn upon read flag, pastes in the data, and then hits the commit and tries to pull the URL. PasteSend does only allow 10 uploads for a guest account per day. So I've had cases where I've hit that, and then the URL that the tool spits out will just be pastesend.com/. In that case, there's not much I can do because you've essentially been 24-hour blacklisted from PasteSend. So hopefully we can successfully get the data back. So we can get readme.out. So we need to give it the same key as before. So in cases where you're transferring between systems, you would obviously need to transfer what your keys are and your key and your IV over to your other system. In this case, I'm just doing it from the same system just for demonstration purposes. We need to tell it the same base encoding and the same header value. So what it's going to do is it's going to visit pastebin.com with that particular URL string. It's going to find the text field, copy that out. It's going to strip the first 10,000 characters, assuming that that's the garbage header we provided. It's going to base 85 decode it, AES decrypt using our key and our IV, and then finally unzip the final data and output that to our readme.out. So hopefully this works. PasteSend's been real fussy for me ever since I wrote this script. And in this case, the URL no longer exists because the data failed, or I was temporarily banned from the website. So we can go try to view it, and it's not there. Great. So this is a case where where PasteSend identified that the data I was uploading had an issue, so it still will return a PasteSend URL, but the data gets automatically deleted on the back end at PasteSend. We can try again with some different values. So for convenience, I'll just use the hard-coded key. We'll try a different base and a different header. And for so first for display purposes, so I have a TAC generate. So this will show you what the generated data is. Alternatively, you can output it to a file so you can use it for other purposes. In this case, we'll try again to send it here. So it did give us URL again, so hopefully it's good this time. So our URL. We don't need a key because we used the hard code key in IV. We used base 16, and we only did 1,000 for our header. So again, it failed. So this is a case of there's not really anything the tool can detect for why the failure is occurring. If we take this, so if we generate a fresh payload, and we copy selection, we go in here to PasteSend. Paste our data in, burn after read, create new pasta. So we get the successful message and the successful site. We copy paste link to clipboard, we go in, and the data is still removed. So this is a case of PasteSend seems to be dynamically identifying that the data is suspect in some manner. So you have to figure out what combination of parameters might allow you to bypass the restrictions that PasteSend is currently using. So that might be adjusting the base value, so using a different base encoding, increasing a header, or honestly just adding your own good data on the front of it. So for example, if in this giant paste, if you wanted to add another several hundred words or characters or part of a known good file to the front of that, when you do the get, you would just adjust the header value to account for that extra data at the front. Alternatively, amongst the other future direction stuff that I list on the website, you could possibly use the word fetch functionality to change the encoding. So essentially do a base 16 or base 32 or even 64 encoding. Use those individual characters as a lookup value against the word list, and then use that as the upload. Essentially, like double encoding it first, base encoding it, and then using those base values to encode it into words, uploading those words, which should all be, none of it should look like base encoded data because it's all words, and then fetching that data and then doing a decode. So that is certainly possible. It takes a little extra work. Obviously, it balloons the data. So depending on what the compression value is, you can see here that for this small amount of data, 3.5 kilobytes of essentially just text, because it's the README for this particular tool. Zipping it drops it down to 1.8K, but then base 16 encoding the data jumps it up to 3.7K. Obviously, using other values like base 82 jumps it only to 2.3K. But if you're uploading several megs of data, compressing it and then re-encoding the text can balloon that quite a bit. And then on top of that, ballooning it further to re-encode it into words. But I'm wondering if it would be less likely to be flagged as suspect by PasteSend. We could also, let's try like a lot of header data. I'm wondering also if you could add, instead of just a header, also a footer. So essentially like shove the encoded data either in the middle or actually like interspersed within the data. I'm wondering if that would be another way to essentially launder the data as it passes through PasteSend to make it less likely to get flagged. So we'll give it one more try with a header of 100,000 words, or 100,000 characters rather. Base 16 encoded. I'm guessing base 16 is probably particularly upsetting to PasteSend, but we'll see. The word fetch algorithm is also not particularly efficient. So we're using a Python library to interact with a particular word service. I found that using more readily available generic word lists, there's a number of bad words, quote unquote bad words, in those lists that if we happen to choose one, when we upload to PasteSend, it'll actually flag and say this has questionable material. You have to make this private, which obviously we can't do with a free account. But we're essentially grabbing blocks of words, adding them to a list, attempting to grab additional blocks of words, and popping those off until we hit our character count. If the website that we are querying decides it wants to misbehave, this can take obviously quite a bit of time. Getting a local word list of only known good words and replacing the function to reach out to the internet would certainly make it a lot easier. Obviously, also, that's another undesirable feature if you're attempting to use this for nefarious purposes. You don't want to. Yep. So, briefly saw a message before it cleared. So that's another thing that the tool could definitely use some error checking. So it looked like either we used a bad word, despite what I just got done saying, or we hit the 10 uploads per 24-hour period, which is much more likely because I've been testing this as I've been conducting the tool. So unfortunately, I don't have a good interaction with the website to show off, but we can do it locally anyway. So we can output this into a file. So we'll decrease the header, increase the base to make it less awful. So we can do encoded.txt. So we can take a look at our encoded text file. So this is data that we could paste really into any upload system and then also retrieve it as well. So in this case, I'm using PasteSend because it's one that's most commonly known and available, but obviously any place where you could store text to then go retrieve would be a viable way to exercise this. So we have our file. We can also get. So in this case, we don't need the URL string. We'll output into the .out, which we never generated to begin with. We have to match the base and the header value, and we need to give it the place where we put the generated text. So this is a case of, again, if we were on a second system, if we had downloaded the text, or we could paste it directly into the command line to detect if it's a text string or if it's a file, we could do it that way as well. And so we can see that we decrypted it. So the base 85 MD5 matched, the zipped MD5 matched, and the raw output matched as well. So we can verify by heading the README. This is what we would expect. And we can head the original README as well and see that they match. So a longer video that I meant to make because we had some issues with PasteSend, which is a lot of what I've experienced. So again, PasteSend doesn't really want you to interact with their website this way. For this type of interaction, they really want you to use developer keys. However, for our particular con-op here, we don't want to put our developer keys onto the possibly compromised VM. We just want to download a script to then transfer data out of the VM. So that is PasteSend. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy it.